name's Harold. Uh, Today I've got in mind to start on a reloading bench. I'm one of those gun enthusiasts, and I shoot a lot of ammunition because I do a lot of practicing and go in and join a lot of competitions. And so anyway, my reloading bench is kind of flimsy. It's made out of a Black and Decker sawhorse thing, little portable thing with a piece of plywood screwed on top, and it rocks and rolls all over. And I've got all kind of weight under it, stuff to hold it still, and it just won't. So I'm gonna build me a heavy duty reloading bench. Now this isn't gonna be furniture because I'm not a carpenter and I'm not a skilled woodworker. I'm just an average redneck. But I got a sort of a set of plans here, and I'm going to build this thing out of 2x10s and 4x4s, and it should be at least heavy, if not sturdy. Uh, I imagine that I'll have to use leg levelers on it and such, because I probably won't get the legs the same length and all that kind of thing. But it'll be a reloading bench, and it should be rock solid, and that's what I need. Something to sit there and never move a bit, won't jiggle things around, and sort of serve me well. Before we get started on that, I want to talk to you about something I was thinking about. I was thinking about where you work. I don't work now. I'm retired, but I put 50 years in working, and maybe more, 51, I think. But anyway, uh, the place you work, what makes it a good place to work, more often than not, is not the money or the benefits. It's most often the people you work with. And I've been lucky enough to work with, and most of all the places I worked, at least 98% of the people were really nice people. And we had a stinker or two come along here and there. You can't help that. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known who the nice people were. But sometimes the people are, they're just nice people and smart people. And mostly I worked with an awful lot of smart people. And, they can make you feel kind of dumb. But anyway, some of them are fun people, and when you want to talk about the fun people, we're talking about Mr. D, and he had a buddy named Mr. J, and the both of them they were their stomach started here and went out and down. They looked like Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And they'd had to lean out against the wall and look down to see their toes. But they were great guys, and Mr. D in particular was a really great guy. He was a lot of fun. He was like a big old kid, always up to some kind of a prank or something. And he worked with me in one of the first big plants I ever worked in. And he had a guard that didn't like him, and he didn't like that guard. We'll call the guy SG. It's just a security guard there. And just to irritate the guard sometimes, he'd call him up, and give him a Bronx cheer. And they just didn't like each other, and then so that was sort of a source of fun right there, watching them, try to get one up on the other. So one night we were on the graveyard shift, and just about an hour before shift change, Mr. D called the front gate because he had found out that Mr. SG was the guard up there that morning. And he told he put a paper towel over the phone so that disguised his voice. And he told Mr. SG, he says, hey, he says, you better watch Mr. D at shift change because he's going to take something out. And so you can just imagine Mr. SG, he was just plumb giddy with happiness there. Not only was he going to get to make a bust and look good at that, but he was going to get to bust Mr. D. So we had been watching Mr. D, and he had a big paper grocery sack like the kind you used to get before they become environmentally unfriendly. And he was putting stuff in it, but he wouldn't let us see what he was putting in. And when he got through, he put newspapers over the top. And we never saw the newspapers because they were forbidden to be there, but somebody might have been reading one, or maybe I imagined it. But anyway, he put this newspaper on top of the sack and headed for the gate. He got up there and grabbed his card and ka-chunk, time card, clicked it in the time clock and threw it in the rack, and Mr. SG come bouncing through the door and says, there's no need for you to clock out, Mr. D. He said, don't you come on here in the office. Mr. D says, what, me? And he says, yeah, you get on in here in the office, and so he went in there and he said, "Now look here, Mr. D," he says, "I've already called the union steward." He says, "I want to see what's in that sack." Mr. D says, "Oh," he says, "this is my sack." He says, "It ain't none of your business. You can't have it." And Mr. S.G. told him, he said, "Well," he says, "you know, you're going to have to open that sack and show me when the steward gets here anyway." He says, "You might as well go and get started with it, get it over with." And so Mr. D says, "Well, I just don't want you to have it." And Mr. S.G. says, "Pour it out here on the desk, Mr. D." So Mr. D turned that grocery sack upside down and dumped it out on the desk. And that's when we could see what he had been putting in there all night. He'd gathered up all the coffee grounds, everybody's old slimy leftover lunch scraps, and everything he could find that, that was disgusting laying around there. And he'd put it in that sack and put the newspaper over it. So he just dumped it right on the desk and told Mr. S.G., "All right, if that's the way you feel about it, you can just have it." And he just turned around and walked out. And, Mr. S.G. just standing there with his mouth open looking at all that. He knows he's been had, and and then he's embarrassed for anybody to find out what happened. All right, well, anyway, now then let's go on and get started making this reloading press. I'm sure that we'll get something built. Well, this is the fellow that's getting replaced here. He's much too shaky for my use, so we'll go from this miserable little fella to one that's big and strong. Okay, here I've got the 4x4 is going to be what I get the 4 legs out of. They're going to actually be 28 inches, but I'm going to cut it every 30 inches so I can get it on my small table saw. The 2x10 below it, I'm going to get 3 pieces out of that. That'll be right at 36 inches for the top. The top will be about 28 by 36. So I'm going to cut everything a little bit larger than the final cut so I can take it and put it on my table saw and actually square it all up. That Black & Decker saw there, that thing's all metal. I've had it, I guess, since the 60s or 70s. And I've cut all kind of stuff with it. Ceramic tile, metal, wood, you name it. It's still going, so I guess it was a pretty good saw. Okay, I don't have anything that'll cut straight through a 4x4 all the way. As you see, that little blade doesn't go that far. And the table saw is a 10 inch. It won't go through there either. So I'm going to have to cut it and roll it over and cut it. And as you can see, my blade wasn't really set straight, so it cut it a little crooked there, which is alright because I'm cutting these 2 inches too long, so I'll have a little wood to square it up on the table saw. You can see this time my cut was a whole lot straighter, because what I did is I set the saw on top of the 4x4 with the blade hanging down, and then I adjusted it until the blade was straight with the side of the 4x4. I should have done that in the first place, but I didn't. Okay, so I'm going to get 3 pieces 36 inches long out of this 2x10, and I've marked it every 37 inches. That way I've got an inch to square it up on my table saw. Here it is, 2/3 through November, and I'm sweating out here. Okay. I know you can't hear me behind all this, but I'm going to cut these boards down to 36 inches now. Well, the rain has stopped me from finishing the job outside. This is another day, of course. I quit yesterday because it got dark and rainy outside. So I brought the saw back inside to finish up the job, and I've got a little shop vac that I'm going to try to use to keep the dust off of everything. Now I'm going to cut the pieces that are going to go under the tabletop. I'll cut those out of 2x4, and I'll do it off camera so you don't have to be bored watching me doing all the cutting. Okay, so I've been making a test cut there so that I could determine how close to 45 degrees I can get, and it's more or less okay. Like all the other cuts were more or less straight. Well, this is more or less a 45. I'm not a carpenter and none of this is going to be terribly precise. But I'm going to go ahead and cut the pieces there that'll be under the table. I'm going to cut a 45 on the end of them so that it looks better. And I guess that's probably the only benefit I'll gain, is it'll look better, but that's what I'm going to do. I'll do that off camera and be right back. Okay, so those pieces are cut at more or less the right angle now. And table legs will fit down in here like such. Should give you an idea of what it's going to look like as the legs are put on it. But I'm going to drill the holes that go down to the tabletop first on my drill press before I worry about the table legs, and then we'll cut the table legs to fit. All off camera, of course. Okay, so now to drill holes for the bolts to hold these braces on the bottom of the table. Got a nice long drill bit. Alright, I got a long bit in the drill press and I'm going to drill all the holes. Got it set where it'll stop just as soon as it penetrates the bottom of the board. And it's the same story with each board. I'll go along and drill the holes where I've marked the X's. Off camera, of course. If you're using yellow pine, you'll eventually come to a spot like this right here, where you're drilling right on the edge of a hard spot. And in that case, a long drill bit doesn't want to do the job. It wants to deflect to one side. So I switched over to a short drill bit so I can come straight down. You can see where this one started to move around on me here when I was using the long drill bit. See if you can see it on the, there we go. It was trying to wallow around in the hole when I used the long one, and so I switched over to a short drill bit so I can make straight holes. After all, that's the whole reason for drilling on the drill press, is to make straight holes. Okay, I clamped the corners and then I went around and drilled holes and stuck bolts in each hole as I drilled it, and I think that's going to hold it fairly still. And I'm surprised the 45s look pretty good to me. So I'm going to turn this over and countersink the top and bolt it together.